or disapprove, to play or not to play. A very good evening to you and welcome to another edition of The Play or Not to Play. And as usual, we look at the quality of news, not much, but more so the insights that this led to gender, ethnic issues, domestic violence, inciting unrest, sexual justice, Nadia, daily aspects of the state, suicide, drugs, alcohol, impact of religion, and impact on those are some of the guidelines that we have, as usual, in the studios, two panelists. That's Ron Robinson, who broadcast for many, many years, a musician in his own right. Miss Paula Paul, an educationist for many, many years. Also,
Dengan pepatu ke dia?
About 16 hours today, a group of young men began blocking the East Bank Highway. This action came maybe just over 48 hours after the Alliance for Change Chairman Nigel Hughes issued an ultimatum to President Donald Ramotar to remove Home Affairs Minister Clement Rohee from his post. One would more or less conclude or want to believe that there is some nexus between the activities today and the ultimatum issued by the AFC Chairman. Joining me to discuss the issue on the East Bank Highway and the ultimatum are Madam Gail Teixeira, Presidential Advisor on Governance, and the Honorable Minister of Legal Affairs and Attorney General, Anil Nandalal. Welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Based on what transpired today on the East Bank Public Road, and putting that into context, or listening to what the AFC chairman would have said, I would want to believe someone would go to would draw the conclusion that there is some sort of nexus, there is some sort of relationship between the two events. Madam Teixeira?
Well, I don't think there's a nexus. I think there's the genesis of the whole thing is, in fact, the statement by Mr. Hughes on Monday night, giving the government and the president 48 hours to remove the Minister of Home Affairs. And I guess expecting the government to succumb. Certainly no government would succumb to an ultimatum such as that, especially in the light of a commission of inquiry addressing the same issue. And therefore it is precipitous and actually opportune in what they did, so that it is not merely coincidental. I believe it is orchestrated that this morning the protest started at the Magistrates Court.
That's correct.
And then continued this afternoon at the height of the traffic on the East Bank Highway. And therefore, to me, the author of this mayhem and discommoding of ordinary Guyanese people, particularly school children, from the footage you showed, it showed school children in the midst of the fire having to negotiate to walk through that, and I think this is reprehensible on the part of the AFC and Mr. Nigel Hughes and Moses Nagamutu. The whole thing falls in their lap. They're responsible.
Minister,
when you look at the events as they unfolded sequentially, you had the chairman of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Nigel Hughes, who was so presumptuous, in my view, to issue an ultimatum to the executive president and commander-in-chief of this land to dismiss a minister, and within a certain time frame. Obviously, the president ignored such a puerile demand. And as you know, when certain demands are made and a time is fixed for the performance of a certain act, and if that act is not performed, then consequences will flow. What you had was, upon the expiration of this ultimatum, as Mr. Hughes described it, you had the protests beginning this morning and continuing along the East Bank Highway, and you would have seen from the footages the thousands of people who have been affected, who could not have gone home and who are not in their homes right now, including mothers, parents who worked the entire day, children who have been out of their homes since early this morning and perhaps are hungry. And then they had the spin-off effects of a series of robberies starting at the Stabrook Market because people had to come back to use the boat. So you had a whole set of commotion and confusion and pandemonium there, and as a result there was violence, there was robbery. On the East Bank you have the destruction of public property, and you have thousands of people not being able to go home after the completion of their daily work. Now, what have those people done to be deserving of this type of punishment? Because this is what it is. And therefore, the person who has to accept responsibility for this is the chairman of the Alliance for Change. At one point in time, Gail would tell you, in our political struggles, we have had to deal with this coming from the PNC, the burning of roads, the beating of people, the violence, the robbery, and we thought that we had moved out of that. Now we have a recurrence of that, now coming from the Alliance for Change. And they must accept responsibility for this. I'm not seeing Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan anywhere. I'm not hearing from him. But two of his leaders, Nigel Hughes in particular, and Mr. Moses Nagamutu, have been very forefront in this whole situation. So in terms of whether it is a coincidence or not, it is patently clear and excruciatingly plain that there is no coincidence. This is a natural consequence of Hughes issuing a ridiculous ultimatum, which was properly ignored by the president, and then he is demonstrating that because the president ignored him, well, these are the consequences, and therefore the responsibility for the damage and destruction, the dislocation of people, all fall in the lap of the Alliance for Change and Nigel Hughes.
But do you think, Minister, is it something that started with the ultimatum, or does it go back? Because I know quite a number of politicians have taken very prominent positions as it relates to defense and so forth in the Commission of Inquiry. Do you think it started with the ultimatum, or does it go back?
Well, it capitalized upon a situation which occurred in Linden, and in relation to which a commission of inquiry has been appointed. Mr. Rohee's involvement, if any, is under review by that commission. The police's conduct in relation to the Linden incident is under inquiry by that commission. So Mr. Hughes and those along with him who have authored this incident obviously realize that the atmosphere is there, the wounds are raw, and they saw the opportunity, the political opportunity, to exploit a very volatile situation, and that is what they did. So you have Mr. Rohee's involvement or non-involvement being under review, you have the police's conduct under review, and then you have, while that is going on, you have, they're not being satisfied with that, perhaps displeased with the way in which the evidence is unfolding. They have shifted focus now and have moved another set of events which can likely lead to the same consequences. Because when you put fire on the road, you dislocate thousands of people who are tired and frustrated. You put the police under stress and strain again. You set all the inflammatory factors there for there to be a combustion. And that is the design, I believe, of Hughes and the others who have created this. And you will note that like the Linden incident, none of the leaders are there on the road when the destruction and the mayhem is taking place. When the Guyanese people are suffering, none of the leaders are there. When the Linden shooting took place, none of the leaders were there. Again, you see this thing being orchestrated, and they remove themselves from the scene, and the ordinary Guyanese people are pitted against the police. And you will note that as a precursor to this incident, you had a series of actions being taken, all designed to condemn and carve the police force into a corner, so that to make them inactive. So having made the police force inactive now because of the condemnatory statements which have been made against the police force, you now make them almost powerless, and then you put them in this volatile situation. And you move the protest before, and it's well calculated. The timing of it, it's at the peak hour of traffic. The location of it is before the Demerara Harbour Bridge. So you have commuters who are going along the East Bank and who are supposed to be going along the West Coast. So you block the road at the most opportune point where you have the most set of people affected. And that is where they put the protest at a particular time. Everything was fixed by an agenda and executed. And those who did it, Nigel Hughes and the Alliance for Change in particular, must be held responsible for it. And they must go back to Berbice and elsewhere where they have gotten their support and explain to the people whether that is why the people voted for them. That is what they need to do.
Mrs. Tishira, I want to believe you've had an opportunity to maybe examine the comments made by the Alliance for Change chairman. I can recall after was looking at the comments, he would have said after the ultimatum would have expired, he more or less said directly to civil society, well, you need to take action.
But he went further than that. He said that the non-cooperation will involve a range of measures, and if the government continues to ignore them, they will continue to make it difficult for the previous incumbent if he continues to pretend to occupy that office. That's a threat. It is more than an ultimatum. This is an absolute threat. And therefore, Anil AG is absolutely correct that this is orchestrated, this is organized, and that it is intended to cause destabilization. It is intended to demoralize the police force, as they have been targeting the police force all the time. And the police force is not perfect or anything like that. But certainly, the commission inquiry, I'll just pause for a minute and say this. I was involved from July 18th to August 22nd with the day-to-day meetings that went on with Region 10, Mr. Sharma, Solomon Sharma, APNU and AFC and so on. And on the day when we had to sign it, which was August 21st, suddenly there was a problem that emerged. Don't sign because the commission inquiry terms of reference weren't done. And I'll let the public know that we were supposed to sign at 5 o'clock, and the press may remember that it wasn't signed until after 6 o'clock. That the delegation that came from Region 10 came very late. We were very hesitant about signing. That there were many interlocutors while we waited for that hour. Mr. Rupnarayan and Mr. Ramjatan are very clear who those interlocutors were, who were shouting and screaming to say that they should not sign this agreement. So the agreement that was for the commission inquiry, which would allow the process to go forward, having gotten the government to agree to this issue, then it was no longer something they wanted, because this is not what they wanted. All the time they want the government to not sit and work out an agreement. So they have more excuses, more reasons to do more havoc and to do more violence. This is an extreme fringe which the AFC is heading. And it has involved a range of people like Mr. Solomon and Ms. Kissoon, Mr. Aubrey Norton and others. I hear that there's a delegation, a very strange delegation, leaving Guyana, headed by Mr. Nigel Hughes, made up of Vanessa Kissoon and Mr. Solomon, Sharma Solomon. I thought that the latter two and Aubrey Norton were APNU. So I'm beginning to wonder what is the connection with the AFC and APNU. But the issue is that even at the nth hour on August the 22nd, there was tremendous pressure to not have them sign the agreement to do with the Linden Technical Team and the electricity, nor the Commission of Inquiry. Having proceeded, and the Commission Inquiry is now functioning, they appear to have lost some momentum, and therefore they now are grasping at anything that happens. And regrettably, the incident with the young man being shot has given them an opportunity to whip up and ratchet up tensions and so forth. And so the violence that you saw on the tape and the burning and I keep repeating it because I said it before. How can you do this to ordinary people trying to get home, children trying to get home from school, who have not had anything to eat from lunchtime, who up to now are still sitting in cars or minibuses or trying to walk home? Can you imagine 5 and 8-year-old children walking past all of that to get to wherever they're living? This is unconscionable. This is unacceptable. And the AFC has to be condemned for this behavior. Their target is the government. The target they are saying is the minister, and they want the minister to resign. The real target is the Ramotar administration, who freely and fairly won the election. Their target is the police force. Even Mr. Granger recently said that he has lost faith in the police force. No matter what the police have done, mistakes and so forth, one does not dare to undermine law and order in one's country, because you are then taking a country down the path of anarchy. And therefore this attempt to demoralize the police force is a very serious thing that needs to be dealt with, certainly. And so I think that tonight has showed once again that there are elements in our society, and in particular the AFC, Mr. Nigel Hughes as the new chairman, and Mr. Nagamutu, who was on, I think, the same program with him, that they are hell-bent on taking this country backwards instead of taking this country forwards. At the same time, they were celebrating the 20th anniversary of the restoration of democracy in this country.
But I mean, the call to want the Home Affairs Minister to be removed from his post. I'm wondering, what, are there any evidence that warrants such a call? Because I don't think there is any concrete evidence or anything
I have spoken ad nauseum on this matter. The law, the Police Act, which regulates the function of the police force vis-a-vis the role of the minister, is extremely clear. The Home Affairs Minister is statutorily prohibited by Section 7 of that act, that law, from having anything to do with the day-to-day running and operations of the Guyana Police Force. If he tries to do that, he would be violating the law. So any Minister of Home Affairs cannot be held accountable. The police force has a structure. It's an autonomous body with a minister, yes, who holds general responsibility for the general and overall management of the force. But in terms of operational matters, the Home Affairs Minister is distanced legally from that aspect of the police force. Minister Rohee is not in Guyana. He's in Uruguay on official business. When this, in fact, he has not returned when this shooting incident, this unfortunate shooting incident on Hatfield Street occurred. So to suggest that the Home Affairs Minister has anything to do with this. It is simply clumsy. But it is carrying out an agenda which started long before. It was galvanized as a result of the Linden incident, and now you have two other incidents which occurred. Unfortunate as they are, they have now gained momentum, those who are pursuing this agenda. And the Gail spoke about who are the targets. The targets are the Guyana Police Force and the government. The victims, however, are the ordinary working people of this country. As they are going home, what have they done wrong? What sin have they committed to be on the road at this unholy hour, hungry, tired, frustrated? I have, I think, 4 persons at my home from the East Bank who cannot go home and will be spending the night at my home. I have had the reason to call a hotel to book rooms for several families who cannot go home because of this incident. You have, and when you look at the people, the persons who are doing the burning and the protesting and the causing the mayhem, they are young people, very young men who I am sure have been paid by those who sponsor this event. Look at them, young people, young men who are being sponsored and instigated, and they are also victims of this type of unfortunate and regrettable conduct. And then you have the burning of public property, the destruction of public property, which by itself is an offense. Now overall, not when you look at it the way that I'm looking at it about the dislocation of people and so on, that's one perspective. But look at the image, that the damage that is being done to the image of Guyana as a country, and we are seeking to advance our country, we are seeking to get investments to come here, we are seeking to accelerate the economic development of our country, and you have one set of people, politicians, who are so hungry for power that nothing else matters. It matters not that they destroy the people of this country, they destroy this country, and they destroy the image of this country as they move to discharge their political plan. And that is the type of conduct for which the AFC is guilty.
I want to just come in here. One Voice is a website, news network that comes out that's always pro-APNU, always. They've just posted that the residents at Agricola are angry over Cabinet Secretary Roger Lunchen's defiant declaration of support for the Minister of Home Affairs. In fact, the rumor that they spread at Agricola was that Dr. Lunchen's comments at his press conference were what triggered the violence on the East Bank Highway. But Dr. Lunchen's press conference was not aired at 4 o'clock. It has not been published. It will appear probably tomorrow in the newspaper. Even if it was broadcast in the news tonight, it did not come into the public's eye or knowledge at 4 o'clock. And so the apologists who are trying to say that it's now not the ultimatum of Nigel Hughes, not the ultimatum of AFC, but Dr. Lunchen, by defiantly saying that, the minister will remain in office. And so this is mischievousness, it is deception to the Guyanese people. And I think it is clear that the evidence showed that they could not have known what Dr. Lunchen has said. Because
but,
it wasn't publicly known until way in the
protest at the court. That was
started
even before the press
even before
conference.
4 o'clock.
Even before the press
It
conference.
began,
Yes.
protests at the court, in front of the magistrate court, started at about 9 a.m. this morning. So the notion being peddled that this Dr. Lunchan's statement precipitated this protest is one that ought to be rejected out of hand. It's a complete and blatant inaccuracy.
Fabrication.
It's a fabrication by those who want to guise what is going on, the destruction and mayhem that they have caused. They are so coward that they can't stand up and accept responsibility. They leave those poor people, both those who are burning the road and those who have been dislocated as a result of those burning. They have left those people at their mercy, as they did with the Linden protesters. They have abandoned these people again. And that has been their modus operandi for a long time now. And I hope that the people of Guyana, the Guyanese people, will not continue to allow themselves to be manipulated by these political architects.
I mean, the call is for justice, but I would want to believe the police, I don't want to believe for that matter, it's in the public domain. The police would have already taken the necessary course of action as it relates to the two shootings.
Yes.
One person is in custody, he's before the courts. Wanted bulletins were issued for the others. So I'm still wondering, the issue of using it as a call for justice for the two young men who were unfortunately killed.
Edward, the police being involved in shootings, fatal shootings and so on, is nothing peculiar to Guyana. It happens in every country in the world. Where you give a man a gun, there are instances where he will use that gun in a manner that some people will say was excessive and unlawful. And that is why each country has a court system. And each country has a system to determine whether that action is punishable by the breach of some law or not. And that process has been activated in Guyana. The file was sent to the DPP. I think the DPP is still reviewing it, and the DPP has asked for some more statements, and one person is already in custody. But that is completely irrelevant to what is going on there, because you have the judge, jury and executioner execution taking place now, because they have already concluded that this thing is wrong. It has not gone through the curial process. It has not gone through any form of adjudication by an impartial tribunal. But politicians have jumped upon it, have concluded that the police acted excessively. I am not saying that the police has not. Neither can I say that they have. That is why you have the court system. Or else every time anyone is accused of doing a wrong, you might as well just convict them and hang them high. Hence the reason for the court system. You have to put them through a process. But that cannot be the basis. It cannot be the basis to unfold another series of acts that will lead to mayhem. It can't be the basis. So that is just a smoke screen to carry out what clearly is a predetermined agenda, one of political destruction and one of causing mayhem and confusion in the country so that the government is going to be affected. That is all this is about. It's about politics, unconventional politics. They don't want to go to an elections, so they create mayhem. That's what this is about.
I mean,
Today, by the way, is the October 11th, is the day when Parliament recess is over. And so, despite statements that I've seen Mr. Granger and Apnu make, this is contrasted with the AFC behavior and the ultimatum of Mr. Hughes. And so, obviously, I believe this is also timed to connect with the first day of Parliament, or the first day of the recess coming to an end, to try to signal to the Parliament that the politics that they're going to wield is to make also Parliament, and even those who may be decent-minded in the opposition members who do not agree with such methods as Mr. Hughes, to buckle under this. Because, Mr. Bond posted on his Facebook, James Bond, a member of Parliament, pointed out something that not an individual or group can monopolize a struggle, And when they cannot monopolize the struggle, they try to demonize it. And so I assume he's talking about the AFC and not about us, and because he's APNU. And so there seems to be this power struggle between who can show who's more radical than the other. But certainly this development is one in which, having not succeeded in their agenda with Lyndon, having not succeeded in that agenda, and the havoc and the destruction that is left in Lyndon is still there and starkly and nakedly available for everyone to see, that they're not satisfied with having lost that issue, that they're now trying to create all these other fires and blockages in other places. And so the East Bank Highway is the next one, as Anil correctly pointed out. This is an attempt to recreate in another way Lyndon, as Mr. David Hines, when during the midst of the Lyndon he called on Buxton to follow suit. Of course, the Buxton people were too smart for all of that and dissed him condignly. I haven't heard him go back and tell the Buxton people to do any nonsense. And so there are these extremist elements who, as Anil said, are willing to take this country into really backward trends and dangerous trends. And we must expose them. The responsibility of what has happened today falls squarely on the shoulders of Mr. Nigel Hughes, Mr. Moses Nagamutu, and the AFC, who made that statement on Monday night, issuing a 48-hour ultimatum. It is not coincidental. It is orchestrated and engineered. And their own statements of their own statement, one, the ultimatum, two, the threat, make it very clear, and the connection is there.
Recall to I recall to Edward the evidence which unfolded at the Commission of Inquiry. Mr. Hughes had stated publicly that he has evidence that Mr. Rohee gave directions and that he will produce that evidence to the Commission. And apparently he was so confident that he subpoenaed the records, the telephone records of a number registered to Mr. Rohee and a number registered to Mr. Higgins.
Numbers.
There's numbers. And when the numbers were examined, communications took place between those two numbers 2 hours after the shooting. And therefore, those records, rather than corroborate Mr. Hughes's public assertion that Minister Rohee had given directions, those records debunked those assertions. So his credibility publicly would have been damaged by the disclosures at that commission. And perhaps this is another chance that he is seeking to restore his credibility. But the problem is that I have no difficulty with personal idiosyncrasies that persons may have about their credibility and so on. What I'm concerned about, that the Guyanese people must not be the victim, and that what you're seeing on the East Bank is what is happening. The Guyanese people, both those who have been misled to come out on the road and burn the state's property, as well as those who are so affected that they can't go home tonight and are sleeping all over, and who I don't know what will happen tomorrow, how they will go to work, how the children are going to go to school, where they're going to get food, where they're going to shower. All these things, they don't care. Those who have sponsored this perhaps are at home, sleeping in their air-conditioned bedroom. They will wake up and bathe with hot and cold water tomorrow. But they have caused the dislocation, the inconvenience of thousands of people who use that road and who have been prevented from going home and whose lives have been temporarily dislocated as a result of the ego of certain people.
But based on the reports coming out of what is happening or what's happening, a matter of fact, I think it's somewhat still ongoing in the Agricola area. The police, of course, said that they would have taken control of the area, but based on information coming out is that when the police would have cleared the area, apparently the people were coming back and place the things and start burning again. But one man called me about 10 minutes before we come in here, and he said, you know what, my daughter, I can't find her. He didn't say how old is the child, but he can't find her. Relatives have already set up their vehicles and preparing to sleep. So it's not just about maybe preventing them from passing or sending a signal.
People are trapped. And I think the word to describe what has happened is that they have trapped people. The children, the school children going home, trying to get from East Bank to Georgetown or vice versa. Children trying to cross. How many children in secondary school cross the river? How many working people cross the river? How many people come from Sue's Dyke? How many people come from Georgetown to go home? People who have been in line from 4 o'clock this afternoon. Majority of them have not reached home or are giving up. Some of them don't know what to do with their cars because they can't turn around, they can't reverse, they can't do anything. That they are trapped. How could one plan something and orchestrate something that would plan to trap people? They are trapped in that area. And therefore, the police have limitations of also what they can do. Because even if there's obstacles and everything, how does the police get the equipment into the area? Cars are blocking the ways. And so this behavior is one that I think all those people you're seeing in the footage that you're showing that are lining up there want to get home, worried about how to get home. Some have to find additional money to get home. Some are trying to figure out if they're going to get home tonight. And there must be fear. Once you see fire and you see all sorts of things, these are images conjured up in people's minds. They've seen it before. This is not anything new. And so I think that Guyanese people have to condemn this. This is not only about PPP, and Nandalal and Tashira sitting here and saying, we are not going to accept in this country forms of protest and picketing, which is the right to people to protest and picket, which discommode and remove the rights of thousands of other people. How can you trap people in a small area between the bridge and Georgetown and have them stuck there for 5 hours? This is, and therefore I think we as ordinary people, just like Mr. Hughes is calling on civil society and non-cooperation, which will involve a range of methods, I don't know what else he's coming with, that the ordinary people must say, we don't accept this. You don't like what the government's doing or you don't like what the police doing, there's a way to do it. But let us get home, let us get to work, let us do what we have to do. And those who want to join them peacefully, that's fine, that's their right. But they have no right to trap people in such a situation.
You see, there's another dimension. We have been concentrating on the people who are affected, coming from where the protest is or where the fires are, coming to Georgetown.
But it's the other way.
But there's another hundreds of other people who are coming this way and who can't come. You have people who would have traveled, who are coming into the country from the airport, who would have been traveling from New York, from Miami, from London, would have been in the air for how many hours, and their families can't get to them at the airport, they can't come here. So you have those people who are disaffected.
And you have people from Georgetown trying to get up East Bank and or go to cross the river. Thousands of people commute every day from across West Coast.
You have all those people, and then
it's a choke point.
And the footage you saw just now, that was taken moments ago, well, maybe about 20 minutes ago from the Stelling. So the situation is
people
continuing.
Trying to find a way to get home.
Still
you know what
people
dangers,
are walking for miles.
You know what dangers people are now being exposed to, who now have to take that speedboat in the darkness of the night to go across that river, where you can have a log floating and a speedboat can run into that log and people can die and people can be seriously injured. That is what it is exposing people to. And then you have the possibility of anger flaring between those who are blocking people from going home and the people who are blocked. Because it's not normal. It can be overbearing on the reason of people when they are in that state of frustration and tiredness, and there's a person lighting a fire there, preventing them from going home. So it's a very volatile situation that they have created. And this type of recklessness, because that is what it is, it's recklessness and irresponsible behavior on the part of persons who masquerade as leaders and masquerade as politicians. And the people of this country must recognize them for what they are.
It would have very far-reaching implications because not only are we talking about who coming in the country who would have already been successful in getting on a flight and get to Guyana, but there are persons who would have booked a flight, they were heading to the airport, relatives who would have taken persons to the airport. So it's much more far-reaching. Persons would have to find money to maybe reschedule their flights and all sorts of things. So it's much more than just blocking the road and preventing those persons from passing.
Well, I want to see tomorrow morning in the press or on the Demerara waves tonight, who are the persons who are going to be condemning this kind of behavior? Because they're always trying to find an excuse for such irresponsible, reckless behavior.
I have just been informed that Caribbean Airlines have cancelled all flights until further notice. So Guyana has been cut off now from the outside world because of the reckless behavior of persons masquerading as political leaders in this country.
Because the crew can't get up and everything.
The crew can't get up. The passengers can't get to the airport. The crews can't come to their hotels and so on. So the airlines have suspended all flights until further notice. That is what this thing has led to. And I am convinced that the ramifications were well thought out, they were well examined, and and this action was deliberately proceeded with to have this consequence, because they want to show the government what they can do, irrespective of the consequences that it will have to the people of this country, to our economy, to our image as a country, and to our, the relations that we have with other people,
But
other
like
countries.
Mr. Shearer, you said just now, you're waiting to see maybe who's going to condemn what happened there.
Yeah.
But this thing started, we can't say from 4 o'clock this afternoon. We have to say from about 9 this morning, and so far, no one would have come forward and say, you know what, these actions are...
Well, I believe you and the press have to call some of the known characters and known opinion makers of Guyana and the persons who always have a rationale to excuse such irresponsible behavior. They should all be contacted, including, I believe, I would hope that the PNC and the APNU would dissociate themselves from this kind of behavior and non-cooperation measures of the AFC. But I would also hope that, I always hope, but they said sometimes live in hope and die in despair, because in fact in Parliament we see the two of them like husband and wife or bedfellows, strange bedfellows, but nevertheless bedfellows, in the sense that they are always cooperating with each other in Parliament. The whole last session they were always working together and agreeing to everything together. So let's see, is the APNU going to look at what has happened and sit like Pontius Pilate and allow Nigel Hughes and the AFC to run amok in this country? I'm interested to see what's going to happen. And I particularly point out the PNC versus the APNU.
You have your press association. They are quick to issue statements. Let them issue a statement how they feel about the dislocation and the sufferings to which the Guyanese people are subject. You have a number of people who like to masquerade as opinion makers and independent thinkers like Christopher Ram and so on. Let us hear what they will say. Let us see how they will react. Because they seem only to have a voice that is critical of the government. They only seem to condemn things which they feel the government is responsible for. Well, the government has nothing to do with the dislocation and the mayhem which is taking place and affecting thousands of Guyanese people, both in and now we are recognizing out of Guyana, because the Caribbean Airlines have cancelled their flights.
But coming back to what transpired or what is happening out there, based on the reports again that we would have received, that the police would have pleaded with the people to look, let's clear the road, let's get the vehicles through, get the persons through so that they can get home. The police were attacked by the group, and the small group, apparently not a significant number of the people in that group are from Agricola.
Well, you see, they would have been told, as I said, that this thing is well orchestrated and well planned, and I gave certain details as to the location, the timing, etc. And they would have been tutored well how to react when the police come. Remember, this is the setting for something they want to happen big. Perhaps they want another Linden, they want another shooting. And you would notice, so far based upon the evidence which is unfolding in the commission, the bullets which apparently were taken out from the people who were shot in the Linden incident didn't come from the police gun. The evidence is tending to go into that direction. So you don't know what is being set up here. You don't know what is being set up here. But what is clear is that a few people were put there, possibly paid, and told to resist and to continue to burn. And their sponsors are, in some safe place, looking on and pulling the strings. That's what's taking place there.
What though is your general advice to persons, because we know these bank people would traverse these bank all day. You have persons traveling from as far as maybe Crabwood Creek coming down, maybe heading to the airport. A lot of people catch the early morning flights, the midnight flights, etc. Your general
and you have people
message
from
to them
Latem who are driving coming
out
to Georgetown.
I don't think that as Guyanese we must allow such activities to become the norm in Guyana. We must not be silent and allow it to become the norm. They feel power when voices don't say anything to oppose them, and silently watch by and hope someone will, because those who are in support are very vocal in the media, very much writing in the press, and so forth. And I think what is becoming clear is the silent majority of Guyana who are being punished in many cases, either because they voted for the PPP or they are not opposed to the PPP civic administration. They want to live in this country, they want to be able to build their houses, they want to work, they want to move forward, that they're almost being punished and harassed in this way. We've seen a number of incidences, and I believe that it is time that people start saying, we're not going to accept this reckless and irresponsible behavior of the AFC or any extreme fringe element or members of the IPNU who seem to be off the leash, who seemed, as Mr. Corbyn himself said at the Congress, he said they're wild men, and then he added, and wild women. And he wasn't talking about the PPP women, I can assure you of that. So that, the beware, my things to the Guyanese people is to beware of the wild men and wild women in our midst who have no interest in this country and only are, consumed with power, and power for anything, at any cost.
But in terms of moving forward, we are seeing what's happening. The evidence as to who would have orchestrated what happened and so forth. What's the way forward? Maybe from the government's perspective, how do we deal with what is happening?
There are many ways. The issue is this particular event is unfolding. One doesn't know if it'll end tomorrow or tonight. But the issue is that there are different responses at the political level to inform the people, to expose the behavior of the opposition and the AFC, to also to ensure that we protect the population of this country, protect their safety. And we have always said that we talk to the opposition parties. We talked to Mr. Granger and the APNU, and that we will not accept this kind of behavior. The Nigel Hughes, a lawyer, knows that what he's proposing, his ultimatum, is absolutely unconstitutional. You know, the Constitution is very clear on what the president does or doesn't do with the minister. And so he is being duplicitous with the Guyanese people. And so I think that we continue to monitor what is happening. We continue to gather intelligence on what is happening. What we are saying tonight is not based on just Anil and Tashira mouthing off. It is based on analysis that is looking at what has happened and what are the connections, and informing the Guyanese people. And I repeat that our best protection is to beware of such elements within our society. If we are on guard, then we are better prepared to respond.
Yes, sir.
I have just received a note which says that medical cases that have to be transferred from Diamond Hospital, from
Coast.
Best Hospital to Georgetown Hospital and vice versa cannot take place. So people may die as a result of this thing. People may die for want of medical attention as a result of this thing. And possibly we should consider instituting criminal charges if these things happen. So it is a very, very serious thing that you have persons who are masquerading as political leaders, who have misled people into believing that they have the people's interest at heart. And unfortunately, our population is a trusting one, and people have accepted them in their confidence. Hopefully, our people will see what is unfolding, because seeing is believing. This is not Anil telling you this or Gail telling you this. The people are directly affected. People are now dying who can get medical attention because of the reckless behavior of these persons who have sponsored this event. As I've said before, the AFC, Nigel Hughes, Moses Nagamutu, must accept full responsibility for this catastrophe. They cannot resile from that responsibility. The events show clearly that they were responsible, they planned this and they executed it. And the Guyanese people, I hope, are observing and are taking notes and would internalize the lessons which they will learn from this exercise, and I am sure they will treat the Alliance for Change and those who are masquerading as political leaders in the way that they should be treated.
Minister, I would want to thank you very much for joining me tonight to discuss this very important issue and to inform the Guyanese people as to what is taking place. Mrs. Tashira, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And of course, we will continue to keep you updated as to what's happening at Agricola as the events unfold. So stay with us. Until then, have a good rest of the night.